point of view. I don't want Lin to be harmed in any way. After all, he is currently he's raising my own child. So I would go out of my way to make sure that Lin is okay or in some entity. I know it's possible for us to take this power and transfer it, but I do know that we're missing something. Sorry, the death god's name again? Blah blah blah.
Miracle.
Malik. Does Miracle as a god of death? He must have an understanding of the transfers of power. It's different with mortals, but it must be something that gods have knowledge of. And after all, a mortal's death is nothing in comparison to the power of a god.
Two seconds.
I look over to Spitt, saying, he looks over to me, almost for reassurance, and I just look at him and say, comes down to it, I'd rather things not devolve into chaos. I'd rather it be controlled in some aspect, maybe not fully. It requires sacrificing myself. I'm okay with that, as long as things don't devolve into what we've seen here. I think it's kind of an omen of what could be. I'd rather it not be that. I couldn't tell you what it would be like for normal people. Nature turned on them like this.
Spitt says, I know. I don't know a way, and I don't think Miracle has any miracles, but I know someone who does know a way. Lynn, after your mother died, I kept having these visions. Visions about her life, like it was her last will and testament or something. I always thought maybe she wanted me to understand her struggle. Maybe to convince me to stick around and protect you. Not that I was planning on leaving or anything. But there is a person. His name is Enkidu. I think he's the first person. The first human, anyway. He helped Anastasi make a body for herself. That mode of fire we have. I've felt something like that before. In that vision. Where they went to the forge. The forge where they tried to make a body for her out of the elements. That forge burned so hot that it could change the shape of a soul. I've never set foot there in person, but I know that it's real. I've seen it more than once. And I know how to get there. As if having just lost a lot of blood or something, you can just see all that sort of energy go out of Spitt. And he just kind of sinks down and sits on the ground. As he's speaking, he looks like the gravity that he holds to his words is like he's casting a power word kill on you or something. And as if totally drained of the will needed to have told you that. And looking at you like Spitt has just killed you. When slumps down and hangs his head.
Would have want the fucking misrecording. Oh. And you see, like, Len... He sees, like, the pain in Spitt's face, but... Len's, he's a stalwart soul, and he looks at Spitt and says, "It's necessary, then. I'm willing."
I guess Spitt's going to think about that for a while. But...
Yeah, that's some food for thought you gotta send over to Sierra. I look to Mielikki. And I look to Armea. I just hope it doesn't come down. But maybe Zareem, maybe he could enlighten us on what was happening to Mielikki. Maybe we can find a solution. No, we will find a solution. Let's take that standpoint first. We're talking about the very last scenario that I would wish to walk into. Looking to Armea, Lynn says, "We're going to have to leave. And I fear that if Mielikki does come to, she may go back into the waters. Do you or any creatures in this grove have a way to contact me? Let me know if something like that happens."
I'm sure that if we put our heads together, we can figure out something, she says, in that sort of one-to-one telepathic connection that unicorns seem to be able to gift people with. Which, by the way, I know it's a telepathic connection, but much like the great old one, warlocks and stuff, it's a very limited range. You have to be able to see someone, first of all, and reach out over this very relatively short physical distance in order to make contact with them. But because that would be a great way to, to call you forth or tell you if things are going wrong, etc. But she says there are many creatures here. We must be able to do it somehow. You get the impression as she's talking that she really is uncertain, but she... And I would make people roll insight checks for this kind of stuff, but not this party. If Kudo couldn't do it, then Linhirn certainly could, and vice versa. She sounds more like there might be, she's not sure, but maybe that it doesn't matter one way or the other to Arame. Like, not that she doesn't care, she definitely cares very deeply, but as maybe whether or not they can, it makes no difference. The path seems to be laid out. It's nice playing insightful characters. I remember back in the day when I would just basically say, they say this. Put it...
Yes, we're just human lie detectors.
Kind of.
I think we should rest then. We should stay here.
Well, Kudo says, would it be wiser to rest within the infinite staircase so as not to waste as much time?
Probably. From my experience, yeah, you're probably.
And I look to Aramea and I say, I trust you and your allies here can keep an eye on her and try your best to at least do to the best of your ability to keep her comfortable while keeping her protected.
Well, I suppose if it's all the same to you, I will tag along to see this Sarium. I suppose I could be wrong, but my instinct tells me there's more productive things to be done with him than watching Sleeping Beauty here.
This may also, I would never normally do this, but should we split the party? Some of us going towards where Spitt mentioned, and some of us going towards this, so we have a couple of options? Or do we think we have time to do both if necessary, one at a time?
Spitt says,
I think we have time to do both.
We have time to do both, then we don't need to split the party.
Because now, the idea is, things changed when I got Mielikki's blessing. We can be on one side of the world instantaneously now.
Okay, as long as we can get to places. But yes, fine. Let's see if we can get some information from this thing, and as you said, Lynn, hopefully it doesn't come to it.
That's a shame. It really would have been a great way to get rid of Spitt, Dalen, and Drogna. To just, not have to now play.
I want to?
Not necessarily. Yes, it would be like Spitt, Dalen, and Drogna going off to do that thing while we go off to do the other. And break.
Don't let it affect your decision. I was really just goofing. If you guys decided that way,
if you truly believe that we can do both, and Mielikki will still be there, then we don't just show up to a corpse. That would just be the.
No. Let's do it. Let's split it.
What?
Because the people who will be needed, if they do need to make this vessel.
It's literally those three.
Yeah. Well, but I don't know if I would have to be there too.
That's fair. Well, if that's the case, we should be doing both. Kudo's perspective is then, look, we should all go together to this thing, try to get the information, and then we should also go there and try to create this moat. Just so that way, if things go south, we can then take that as our plan B. And the worst case scenario is, or best case scenario is, if we don't need to use it, then we still have this moat.
And if we do send the other three off, they can start at least getting us a location that's closer. So I could scry on one of them, and, we could inform them that I could scry on them, and then we could instantly be there with them if there's a tree nearby.
That's, I guess, an option if we wanted to do it that way.
I think that would work.
All right.
It's use them as the scouting front to get closer to the other one.
We still take a long rest, and we all of us together still take a long rest in the infinite staircase. But then,
right on. In which case, we will take our short rest while your characters take your long rest.
Alright, I will use up some hit dice.
go ahead and do all that. And
I
will
guess
be back.
Dalen will just use... Actually, Dalen still, I think, has lay on hands to...
Yeah, if you guys offer it pointedly, he'll take some little nibbles. He eats like 4 courses of salad. Strongly leaning into the thing that he's a vegetarian. And then he asks if you have any lamb or anything. He's like, good. Something light and refreshing for afters, and he eats like a whole rack of lamb.
Not a real vegetarian.
He's like, no, lamb doesn't count. Haven't you heard?
Then judges.
Lamb and fish don't count.
Judges.
Lambs are supposed to be killed. They're like fish, they don't have any feelings.
God.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's do this. We'll keep I guess we'll keep a thing on each of us so that we can contact each other.
Okay. Yeah, sending stone. Gotcha. Roger that. In which case, we're going to say "Do svidaniya" to our B party. I'm just going to put them together over here, including the Pegasus, which is the mount of Dalen the Starfingerkrine, and the Nightmare, which is the mount of Spitt. So honestly, your party could maybe be seen to be all roughly equal terms. No,
it's funny, we have
not.
the 3 magicians and Kudo, and we have the 3 strikers.
You're like a magician. You're just a magician of the fist.
No one can cast fist like Kudo can. See, a magician is someone who knows 10,000 tricks. But, as someone once said, I would rather fight a man who has practiced 1,000 tricks one time than one trick 10,000 times. So, are we then heading to see Zarim?
Yep.
Lynn, as you guys are parting ways on the staircase, of course, I'm sure some short goodbyes are said and just kind of good luck, like, no big deal, but it'll be a little while since we see each other. It's a little awkward, like, it's a little weird to split up the party. You guys are always together, But, Drognet is quick to remind everyone, well, actually, we've almost never seen each other in the last 5 years, so it's really not that weird.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, yeah, okay, fine, technically. But Spitt to Lynn, you just see, as they're, preparing to part, Spitt looks not conflicted, maybe quietly resolute, like, I guess maybe the same way that Armea was. The path is laid out. I'm not happy about it, but I'm gonna do it. So, with that, he braces your shoulder and, quietly, not like announcing it to the sky, but says, I'll see you in a little while, blood brother.
And Lynn, grasping onto his shoulder, says, I appreciate you. But you... It sounds awful, but you've been more of a brother to me than my own flesh and blood.
We are what we do, And your brother, they not like us. No, sorry.
You right.
With that,
and Drog will he takes out his blade, kind of puts it in front. Obviously, we don't have Tyler to do this, but he would say this. Says, I've been serving with all of you for a long time, and we've all been through a lot. But this is not the end, and we will find a solution, as we always have. And other encouraging words, blah, 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 since I'm not going to speak for him. He's going to use in the name of the first men.
Nice. I don't think we've got to see
It says choose up to 6 humans that can see or hear you, and I'm aware that's
that yet.
Dragonborn are not humans, but are you really gonna hold that against them?
It doesn't say humanoids. Okay.
That would also include.
It has not been edited since the original writing of it, but okay, we are not. But the people who made it explicitly were human first, down with the Xenos, humanist supporters. Like, honestly, at that time, don't know if I can blame them. Everything was really, really fucked up at that time. But anyway, we're talking way, way in the history where there really weren't a lot of other sentient races around. So it's kind of like if you had a death ray and you had to calibrate it to not hurt your people. Like, well, you'd keep testing it until it didn't hurt your people, but you would probably call it good there and not start calibrating it against theoretical people that could exist, just against the way that humans are now. So yeah, it is basically a humans only artifact supposed to be. That said, I don't know.
If so, then it'll only affect him and Ash.
I will say, when dealing with large companies of people, it's pretty much just going to affect humans. But you know what? For the purposes of the party, we'll lick our thumb and press and slide so that edge is kind of blurred. In the name of the first men.
In the name of the first people.
No, exclusively men. There were no women yet. That was a time of getting things done, not a time of recreation. Therefore, there was no need for... I'm kidding. I'm joking.
Everybody but Kudo, because it's up to 6, and Kudo can handle not having the extra, would gain 18 temporary hit points on top of... So... This does not include the 17 that you'd have, because if you hit that amount, you still can go up to that if you heal.
Yeah, the 17 is not temp HP. It is temporary maximum and total HP, which is definitely not sophistry or whatever. But yeah, it does actually stack according to the rules of the game. Now, thank you, Drognan, for that inspiring speech. I like the characterization of I've been serving with you guys for a while. Seemed just the kind of thing that he would say. 35, right? Yeah, 35. So, with that, we will part.
All right.
It's temporarily permanent as opposed to permanently temporary, which is...
Yes.
Did anyone ever take that +3 chain shirt? Did we give it to Mothrin?
Yes, I did. I believe we did. Did we adjust Mothrin's AC to reflect that?
What is your AC, Mothrin?
The sheet is broken, but I believe it's supposed to be 18 now instead of, it was 14 before.
I believe that.
What's your dexterity score?
Fucking big. Hold on.
Big.
Fucking big.
So the chain shirt
it's
plus 3.
17.
Okay. Well, I think 18 total should be right because chain shirt is medium, so it's got a max dex modifier of 2. So with max dexterity, it would be 13
so 18,
plus 2.
Yeah, 18 makes sense.
Yeah, and then it's a +3 shirt, so it's 18.
Yeah.
That is actually correct.
I've been going by that because the character sheet's broken. It's a bit funny.
Cool. All right, that's all. Everybody is jacked up and ready to go out on their own.
Right on. Well, with this, we part ways, never to see any of those 3 again. They fell into... They walked through a construction zone with no hard hats just after leaving a part of the game that was not complete yet. And a pixel fell on their heads, killing all of them tragically.
What a tragedy.
Luckily, the merchandise, the Dalen line of fuzzy socks, saw a notable increase in sales as a result of his untimely death. And that, I think we can all agree, is what's important. Alright, I don't know what that was all about. The spirit of autism has once again visited this table. So, through the infinite staircase we wind, heading for the venerable Galabok-Zar containment area. What was once the realm of Thembershad and is now just free real estate. So, as usual, if someone wants to roll me a D100.
I'm not rolling it this time. Not after last time.
You want to
Well, it didn't go bad, but scared me a little.
It didn't go bad. It just resulted in a gnome bomb. It was like Snow White in the Seven.
I'll do it for you if you want.
Alright.
I have this huge 100 that was offered to me.
Yeah, go for it.
Sick.
$31.
Okay. As usual, nothing at all happens on the infinite staircase. The odds of meeting anything up here are basically none. Thanks, James. So, after what turns out to be quite a long and uninteresting journey, just the four of you and Soren, you eventually find your way to the temple of Thembershad, the outer boundary of the mountain. Actually, no, sorry. Yeah, you wouldn't have to stop outside the mountain. That has since changed. So you actually could probably just find your way right into that little area that teleports you to the temple proper. That sort of inactive but permanent portal gate thing. Sorry, 2 seconds. 2 seconds. I'll be right back. Oh, okay, do that.
Hello.
Say hi.
Yes, we split the party. Mwahaha. It's funny when we split the party. We're not splitting the party really. We're just like now actual party.
Yeah, we're leveling the playing field. Honestly,
Yeah, like this is what it should be normally.
we're nerfing the OPness that we have.
I gotta get back in here, but I love you guys.
We do some crazy shit. People find it hard to believe our game even exists.
Strange man loose in my house.
You?
There's a second strange bearded man loose in my house. So, having arrived at this kind of the area that houses the permanent portal gateway, and quickly making short work of the mechanism, the portal fills in, becomes active, and now, if you guys like, you can step through to the fire temple, wherein the Galabok-Zar has been contained for as long as we know. Lynn, let's see. Actually, everyone here gets a weird, a slight foreboding, like a kind of a deja vu that seems to carry some negative karma or something. Like, what's going to happen when we step in here? As far as you know, everything last time was fine, but as far as you know, everything last time was a complete disaster. Images of a very large spirit of fire wreaking havoc, nearly killing everyone. But, yeah, I mean, that was the last time you were here. So as far as you know, the last time you were here, it's all good. Just not the last time you were here. Clear as mud? You guys can step through whatever you say. Are we high? I would say...
No, just confused.
Mothrin probably
Eh.
is. I think he's the tallest one. He's about 6
Ha
feet 6
ha
feet.
ha ha.
All right,
That's just
so
hilarious,
let's
I know.
go talk to these peeps.
All right, so through the portal you step, and the heat kind of mirage effect as you look up to where the fucking hell. Sorry. I really hope that doesn't make it into the recording. Sorry. Something popped up on my screen.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, it was YouTube, but like not good. Anyway.
Not work appropriate.
Definitely not. Anyway, but as you step through this intense sort of heat mirage of where the Galabogzar is or was, it takes you a moment because you can't like look directly at it because the heat is so incredibly oppressive and it warps the air and everything. But the Galabogzar is no longer in the air as it used to be. In fact, as far as you can tell, it's nowhere to be found inside. The structures which supported it, those sort of large scarab things, those large snakes, I think, holding those orbs from which the sort of lashes of fire were extending out to hold up, that they are all in ruins, basically. However, inside, you see Zarin. Well, in a sense, he is currently in the form of several Galabdur who are just sort of, standing around in a circle, facing each other, sort of talking with each other in that way that they do. Let's see. It would be in Primordial, I imagine. So, Lynn, just what you can make out from the conversation, he seems to be kind of deliberating with himself, maybe just externalizing some thoughts. Nothing that you really recognize. After having listened for a moment, it sounds to be something about an earth temple and the strange glass there and everything. But it does not seem to hear you guys approach. It seems pretty wrapped up in its little conversation that it's having with itself.
In Primordial, Lynn will say, Zarim?
There's some grinding of stone on stone as they all kind of scrape and turn toward you. And
in unison.
Yeah, in unison. And in unison they start to say, like, their voices overlapping with each other. Like, excuse me, I didn't hear you. And as they're talking, like, it gets harder to understand what's being said in Primordial because they're also moving, and the scraping of stone on stone, of course, is something akin to this dialect of Primordial, so it kind of... it almost sounds like someone speaking the Sims language very quietly over the top of him actually trying to say things to you. Because there's some incomprehensible stone grinding against stone. But then there's the totally comprehensible stone grinding against stone that is Primordial. He's also reassembling himself as he speaks. So they start to get a little thrown off, like one voice coming just behind another, until it becomes an incomprehensible mess, until finally... It is good to see you all well. And as the head Galabdur kind of rotates on, it sort of grinds out some stone dust, and it kind of... It doesn't make a cough noise, but it does sort of exude a shot of dust from the inside. Thank you for your help.
Oh,
What can I... Yes. With the Galabaxar. As he is talking, Lynn, out of the corner of your eye, you see Soren, who seems like really, really unbothered about the heat, but suddenly, like, look in your direction, sort of corner of your eye, clearly not thinking that maybe you can see him, but just sort of look at you like with a slightly impatient kind of, is this gonna go on? Like, is he always like this? And yeah, as Zarim is saying, when the Galabaxar failed,
And like Len's like sitting there trying to just understand like what he means. I mean, by this point, would Len just be able to like? I mean, we got the flame.
Oh.
We have like these weird, vague memories of this like experience. I feel like Len and Kudo are both insightful enough to like put all the pieces together.
Well, Kudo is, as being the impatient one that he is, and he understands what they're saying, and he also knows that they can understand him. Kudo says, "We have an emergency. We don't have much time. I'm sure that you probably can sense it through whatever ancient ways that you feel, but we need your help and your advice."
Of course, there's never any time to waste. What flavor of emergency is it?
I look to Lynn.
With Mielikki. She's unwell.
The young druid. How is that, you say? Unwell, how?
Very hard to explain, but she is essentially sick. She's being drained of her powers. And her mind is fragmented.
I thought she had done well for herself. Is she not a god now?
A dying god, but perhaps you have knowledge on how to restore one who is a god that is dying.
Did you know her before she was a god?
To be exceptionally clear, I didn't know her when she was a god. That all happened while I was guarding this place. But yes, I knew her long time ago, when she was just a druid like you. I'm sorry to hear that she's not doing well. Don't often hear about gods getting sick. Not in a long time. Anyway, there was more of that going on back during the dawn times.
We'll dig further, but I don't know how much time we have. Was there any points in time back when you knew Mielikki that she seemed confused, that she didn't really know what was going on, or she felt like things were wrong.
I wouldn't say that. She was always very insightful. Almost like she had foresight. She knew my name before I knew her. Bit of an uncomfortable meeting. She was right angry that I was there to be met. Don't really remember why. In time, we laughed it off. Became just another story.
Len looks to Soren while he's saying this. That kind of lines up with what she was saying when she was in the pool. And Lynn has a sharp memory. I'm just going to put some of these lines into the chat so that other people can see.
Okay.
He's just going to repeat verbatim what he heard Mielikki say.
And as you're saying this to the group, Zarim kind of like slowly crooks his head at you. That's odd. That strikes a flint in myself. Spooky. Like
So that
you were there.
was verbatim what she had said to you at that time.
You're asking a lot of an old pebble master druid. It's been a long time.
Stones, they have a hard time on forgetting things. They're pretty stubborn that way.
Right, you are, Master Druid, yet even water defeats stone, given time. And the currents of time have been passing over this old stone. I've lost a few things, but there is a spooky feeling in these old stone bones. You sound just like her. Remember you not being here. It strikes a flint. I guess I was on the back foot, wondering how she knew me. I was a young stone then. I didn't just assume I'd forgotten her. I was still sharp and rugged in the brain and the body. He gives a short laugh akin to blowing air out your nose when you type lol as responding to something someone beside you. Just like some dust flies out of his face. it probably makes a noise more like rocks clacking together. A burp, honestly, would sound like his laughing. A particularly like low, cacophonous burp. How is it you? Well, what I mean to say is, what made you come here saying all this? She's sick. How is it you came to know about all those things she said to me? That is, if I remember right.
She's the one who spoke them. I was just there to hear her. I think this affliction she has, it does something to the mind. Or it puts you in the wrong place and time. I think she was being affected by that. She was essentially giving herself information that she wouldn't have had at that time.
I don't know what to tell you. I wish I was fresher. I wish I paid closer attention. Excuse me, my very large friend. Yes, Master Dragon. Soren kind of looks around quickly between you guys, like, I never said I was a dragon. He says, you're a thing, after a fashion, aren't you? I don't understand what you mean. I suppose I'm made of a thing. But isn't everybody? What I mean to say is that you're some kind of construct, aren't you? I don't know what that means. Very good. I'm just thinking out loud. Ignore me. Sorry to interrupt. That's okay, Master Dragon. I suppose in a place like this, you would feel at home and in part. And again, he makes one of those single, like, clacking of stuff together in his mouth that signifies a chuckle. Like, as if to say that this place that was the home to a dragon is like, I can kick my feet up then. Soren also in your guys' direction, kind of like, my apologies. Steps back away, just like, as if physically walking out of the conversation. Anyway, I can't say I know any way to fix this. God's getting sick is not something, like I said, you hear about nowadays.
What happened during this Dawn era How were these gods getting sick?
Well, I wasn't the most in the loop at the time. I was only a lowly servant of the gods. I suppose they were probably suspicious of me. The elements were battling with the gods back then, before it was decided what a god was or what they would do. They were a lot like you then. They had power of a sort, but mostly what they had was gumption, a strong will. They set about trying to kick the primordial forces out of Toril. Seemed to work, as you can see. Things that look like me don't rule this plane. I suppose they might have kept things quiet around me in case I was thinking of betraying them. You might think that's funny now, but I used to be a lot more nimble. Maybe I could have rolled away and told the primordials all their secrets. Never wanted to, though. I'm sorry you asked what made them sick. I always figured it was primordials doing. Or maybe one of the gods playing traitor. A little poison in the wine. Things were all together stronger then. Brighter, more vibrant when the world was young. Maybe diseases were young too and full of fighting spirit. But I couldn't say for sure.
Did they seem to go into bouts of confusion or remembering events incorrectly?
The fever, you mean, drove some of them batty. But that's normal, isn't it? I thought all kinds of regular folks like you got a little crazy when the fever's on them.
Oh, I mean, when some people are sick, they do exhibit weird things, but this is a little bit different. One's gonna, look over to Soren to see if he can, intuit anything out of, what he's hearing.
Seeing your look in his direction, he chuckles once in a sort of self-deprecating way and says, I apologize, but I'm not actually that old.
No, I mean, it was more like, does he seem to be reacting to this information?
Make an insight check.
Why is this not rolling? Freaking Roll20 broke again. 30.
Clearly, Soren's gears are turning, thinking. It doesn't seem to mean nothing to him. But you have an inkling that he might sort of have an idea of something, but he's not said anything for whatever reason. Like, you get the sense that he might not be 1,000% forthcoming with information necessarily.
Did any of these gods at the time die from their afflictions?
Well, there were so many dying back then. It's hard to say what all of them got killed by. I suppose some of them must. There were an awful lot of them back then. Let me think about it for a moment. I remember hearing about a deity, a bookish type, the kind who needed to know everything about everything. I think his name was... You can see a little more stone dust flying out, and Lynn, something about the way that the stone dust catches the light makes your heart beat, twice rapidly. Make a perception check, will you?
$31.
I think his name was... As the dust floats up out of his mouth, you can see a little other particulate within the dust. A smoke, if you will. Or a mist. Well... Sorry. He looks around a little bit, like...
And Lynn's gonna look over at, Soren, give him, at everyone, and, give them, a knowing look of, he'd, this is the same exact thing. Would you be able to recall information about him? I don't... Did the,
Sorry, go ahead.
Netherese... Did that come much later? In this early era?
Who? As he's struggling out the who, very quickly, Soren kind of leans in to not interrupt what the big guy's saying, and just says, "I think if he's referring to the Dawn War, the Netherese came a long time after that.
That's okay.
By several of my lifetimes, much less yours. I can't say I've ever heard of him." But I've been a bit of a homebody. I don't get out much. Anyway, what were we... Soren taps you on the shoulder, Lynn, and kind of like pulls you in by the collar a little bit and says, I'm going to try not to say this too loud and upset your friend, but I may have a way to dig a little bit deeper into what's happening here. I have a talent for letting places tell me things and objects. Your friend here is a sort of an object. It may be that there is something in him that remembers. Of course, it won't work if he's in the way. Just a thought.
Kudo would agree.
Yeah, I mean, Lynn looks to Thorim and he says, we've helped you previously. You're being an asset to us now, but would you be willing to let us use a bit of magic on you so that we can try to figure out more about this? It's important. Very important. It's vital to ensuring that the nature elements are protected.
Don't see why not. Seems fine to me. Soren sort of goes, excellent, let me just prepare for a moment. Lynn, if I could have your assistance, I think perhaps you misunderstand me. What is in the way is not his will, it is the fact that he is not an object anymore. I gather that he's a friend of yours.
What if he instead... What if he instead just gives a piece of himself?
It could be worth a try, but if it doesn't work, we may not get the chance to try again for quite some time. This is not something that I can do without severely taxing myself. Yes, just hold it like this.
No, so Kudo would say, look, Lynn, if it comes down to the natural order of things, I have no ill will against our friend here, but at the same time, it may be best if we understand what can save all over this ancient creature. It wouldn't be the first time we've taken down ancient creatures for the greater good. And I also mentioned, and it looks like, regardless of the fact this thing is afflicted and is on the same time frame as the rest of us. So even if we don't, his time is waning regardless.
Lynn looks to Zarim and he says, you're willing to put your existence on the line to keep... I can't remember the name of that fire elemental.
Imix, yeah.
Yeah, to keep Imix contained, so that the natural world would be protected.
Yeah, a lot of good I did there. Again, he lets out a thing of smoke a thing of dust, from him laughing very slightly. If it weren't for all of you, I guess things could have gone bad. Despite the unknowable age of this creature and its face that doesn't really show much emotion. Lynn, your insight tells you that he's sort of being self-deprecating and clearly not understanding exactly what you're asking him, but sort of trying to be jovial about and having some humility about himself.
Zareen, what I'm asking you is, would you be willing to give up your own existence to ensure that nature stays safe?
If you're asking if I would have gone down swinging, I already did. When Nimix got out of the box. When I let the fire elemental out of the bag, as it were.
What I'm asking of you is, you may need to give up your life for us to be able to solve this, to understand.
I see. To fix your Mielikki.
Not just her. So more than that. There's more people who are afflicted by it.
Well,
And if it keeps going as it is, then things could turn out really bad. Like world-ending bad.
He pauses for a moment. I always thought that Mielikki was a nice girl. I haven't seen much of the rest of the world, but I've been around a long time. I've done what I was put here to do. I don't know what happens to the primordial when it stops going on. But it doesn't seem like it would be all that bad to be a stone again. You tell Mielikki I said hello and goodbye. He,
That
with
makes me a little sad.
he reaches his giant stone appendage sort of into himself. And some of the mass of his body kind of moves out of its own way, like a stone glide spell. And as you can see on this very unflinching face, just a sort of a focus and a concentration in the eyes of Zarim. And then with a kind of a grinding noise, and then a noise that's like the escaping of rushing air, like a depressurizing cabin on a spaceship or something. There's like a and coming out of the center of this creature comes a kind of it almost looks like a very, very rich vein of ore and gemstones. And as that sort of depressurizing noise and that grinding, as soon as you can see this stone, it's about the size of a human head or so, sort of covered in gemstones that are like unlikely to have ever grown near each other, or with some like raw metals and stuff mixed in there. As soon as you can see it, Zarim continues to just like stare straight ahead with it in his hand. Well, that was easy.
Also, at the game, I love this was like a kind of like almost mini boss that you had intended for us in the past. We just defeated one of your bosses just by asking it to die. That's how strong we are now.
When you guys found it, it was a collection of Gale of Durs down in the bowels of the dungeon outside, trapped from being able to return inside. There is no guarantee that this guy ever lived. Yep. You're right. That is pretty amazing.
All right. Well, I look to Soren to see what he gleans.
I'll have to set up a few things. Take a load off. I won't need any of your help. I just need a moment. Actually, I'm going to look up this ability. So, as he's preparing, he's sort of occasionally interjecting as he's laying out some components. He occasionally interjects, a thought. The first thing he says is, I can see most anything that could be seen in the proximity of this thing as it was walking around. But we should try to focus on a place and, if possible, a time. He says, personally, I would be interested in the conversation that he had with Mielikki, unless you have a better idea.
That would seem to make sense to me.
Agreed.
Very well. He continues to set out his components. As he set all of these things out, there are some like flasks of this kind of almost transparent, sort of sky blue liquid that's very thin, that he sets down around him in front of himself, one on his left and one on his right, but ahead of himself, sort of out to arm's reach, like to as far as he can physically reach. He places in his lap this stone that Zarim just yanked out of himself. And around the exterior, he has placed small lumps of Zarim's body, like a kind of a Stonehenge. There's a moment where it appears like, there's no way that he's going to be able to like lift these, but with this obviously inhuman strength, just creates like a circle, and then at 4 points, but not equidistant from each other or anything. 3 of them are definitely sort of to a side. And here, hold on. I can actually maybe draw this. What page did I leave you guys on? Yeah, here would be easier. So, he has a sort of a circle. But one sort of tower that he builds being over here. And then 3, obviously this should be a nearly perfect circle, but kind of a thing. And he, to complete it, he sort of draws in toward himself with these, with the remaining pieces of the stone. And then he sits at the center of it, and in his lap, holding this thing, he just picks it up out of his lap and holds on to it. And he begins to say what sounds like a short prayer. He continues this prayer for what seems like, 2 or 3 minutes, perhaps. As he's praying, you can see him slowly pulling his hands away from the stone as it levitates in front of him, as if sort of held aloft by his breath, as he, at a very consistent pace, says the words of this prayer, as if there was no punctuation, just at a very ordered and regular pace. And he reaches out toward this clear liquid. It's like kind of sky blue. Puts his hands over it. And you can see it beginning to almost seem to bend the glass jar, the glass vials that it is in, like from within, as if it's exerting a lot of outward force. And you can sort of see it running on the inside of the little glass vials, and they're starting to almost look to bend a little bit outward. Finally, with the sound of shattering glass, the liquid comes out of the vials, runs into his hands. The glass seems to, whether that's intentional or just a part of it, you can see he winces somewhat, but continues into this very straight, ordered tone, keeping his words sort of exactly equidistant from each other. And this liquid, sort of falls to the ground and then flows around the perimeter on the inside of those stones that were once Zarim's body. And in the places where the towers are built, they sort of run up like rain going in reverse up the side of an old building. And above him, the liquid runs toward the center, as if over top of the stones of Zarim's body that he's laid out, but without touching, and just sort of toward each other until it's like a little halo around his head. And getting thinner and thinner, the liquid sort of stretches itself out until it's more like a curtain of very thin water, like a curtain of mist, if you will. And slowly a picture, blurry visions, like appearing in strange prismatic colors, like when sunshine comes down and strikes a haze, it leaves a sort of a rainbow behind, and in such a way some colors began to be made out. And slowly through this process, you can see forms starting to make themselves out. The glass in Soren's hands is causing some noticeable blood loss. Although, as you look at his face, you can see his eyes are completely unfocused. His weird cat-like eyes. They have, the pupils of which have expanded to basically take up the entire inside of his eyeball. Like when a cat is extremely interested in something or whatever, it's super dilated, like all the way open, as if trying to let in the maximum light. And it seems to take a very, very long length of time for these forms to start to be less of a sort of a shimmering curtain and more of a physical object that one can see and understand. As these hazy, prismatic kind of colored shapes start to become more refined, and you can see Soren, like, as if he's squeezing with his mind, like trying to... The same look that you would see on someone's face. I don't know if you've seen, there's a bar challenge where you're supposed to bend this bar and it's under an incredible amount of spring tension. That kind of focus, like trying to squeeze down just toward one point, as if sort of trying to force this mist into the shape that it is supposed to take. And a figure, lone, unaccompanied, and undetailed at first, but slowly gaining in detail. The sort of clothing seems to come first. It is rough hewn, and not with any method of sewing that you guys can recognize. It's made of something that has fur, and yet it all is sort of in one piece and doesn't seem to have any stitch marks or anything. But on the hip of this person is this almost like a sickle-looking object. As more of the misty vision compresses in, the hair of this person, it hangs in a few long braids, very thick braids, like as if trying to tie. They're a little uneven, but it's almost like someone tried to tie like a sheep up all into like a braid, trying to like braid that much hair. There is a ridiculous amount, and it's sort of several braids, and then those are sort of wrapped around each other, not with any kind of tie material, rather another braid goes around and sort of binds them together. And slowly but surely the face, ever devoid of detail, but ever so slowly coming into being, and Soren bleeding heavily from his hands and looking to be very heavily focusing, as if he's chipping away at some block of granite to reveal what lies beneath the sculpture that is to be made, that he's sort of envisioning, it almost seems. The face gaining detail. It is a young woman, a woman that has known a hard life based on the look of her face. She has an intensity to her gaze, a warrior's gaze. And yet, as the environment coming to around her, she moves through an underbrush very slowly, as if she can only move at the speed of how fast Soren can render this. As she very slowly moves toward some body of water at the center of this, the branches and things seem to just sort of slowly bend out of her way, as if slightly bowing. And the look in her eyes is that of someone keeping their attention for danger, as if they could potentially be, ambushed at any moment. Almost free of the edge, of the forest, coming into a small clearing, she stops, just lurking in the undergrowth, as she looks at some other misty figure that takes pride of place in the clearing. She narrows her brow, considering what she's looking at. As it takes form, it seems to be a large lump of rock. She very quietly sort of reaches her 3 fingers down behind her as like a claw, and a vine starts to creep up from the ground behind her, sliding up into the sleeve of her garment. And she sort of seems to stuff, almost like with a playing card trick, stuffing a card up the sleeve. But you see, as she, brings her hand back in front of her, her sleeves sort of go stiff underneath, as if the vine has, like, hardened up. And she, with the hand forward, she's sort of willing some of the branches to move out of her way and holding forward her hand until her sleeve sort of straightens. And just as she's about to sort of launch this whatever out, clearly, with purpose toward this chunk of rock, there is a slight, rustling in the bushes, and she, whips her head over in that direction. And with a wave of her hand, you see all of these bushes and stuff, separating to reveal what is on the other side. And you see a slightly concerned, but not overly, young man who, based on the look of him, has lived an equally rough life. He's slight. He carries some ranged weapons, a sling primarily, you can see, and several stones, and a pouch in his belt. He has a very slight frame. He has very short hair and an eye that, as the misty vision comes to become a reality, the eye never gains any color. It's devoid in detail because Soren is sort of unable to will it to be fast enough. But unlike the one eye, which does eventually come into detail very slowly and has this very piercing kind of blue, the other one is almost as if it was never assigned a pupil or an iris. It's just a white, murky something. He looks slightly concerned, but not much. And she looks back at him with a kind of a good-natured glare, as if her mere look was insinuating that this person she's now looking at is an idiot or something. She makes a little motion with her hand as if to signal, pay more attention. And she, with her eyebrows, flicks out in the direction of this innocent-looking large stone over there. The man that she's gesturing to looks back and forth, seems not to be all that concerned, but still goes through the motions of getting ready to engage in a fight, and gets ready in the undergrowth, arming himself with his sling. But as he places a stone in the sling, he looks to the tiny pebble, basically, that he's using, and then out to the big stone, and looks back to this woman that I'm sure by now you guys recognize as Mielikki, as she maybe once was. But he looks back to her with a look of what's this? What is my slingshot going to do? I'm attacking a stone with a stone. And he doesn't seem to be taking it all that seriously. But she gives a silent, count, and the two of them leap out of the brush. She casts her hand forward, and this vine launches out as if it were a solid piece. And when it touches the stone, it it had something heavy at the end. The momentum kind of carries around, and it sort of binds on itself like a chain. And they start into taking positions in the clearing that would be favorable. They spread out a bit. And an unseen third party sort of making out from the the bush just a step behind the other two. And just as they are launching this attack, this third, sort of person who is has a kind of an animal look to them. They have sort of feathers growing out from behind their ears. It looks very itchy, but sort of makes a somewhat quiet, like as if trying to whisper from a distance to these people. He goes, "Stop!" And they look at him. He says, "It says that it is not here to hurt us." They look to each other and back to him. "It wants to talk." The blind in one eye guy armed with a sling looks between the two and seems to have no opinion one way or the other about how this turns out. Mielikki very slowly, relaxes her posture ever so slightly and calls out to this large stone. "Make yourself seen and known. If you want to talk, you will use our tongue." There is a creaking of stone, and as it wheels about and shows itself to be a Galeb-dur, its arms, despite the fact that it presumably could project them from anywhere, are sort of bound up in this vine like several layers of rope formed into shackles around it. It says, "I am not so good with the tongue of yours." And the blind in one eye guy goes, "I don't know, you seem to have a pretty good handle on it." Mielikki looks in his direction as if, scolding him slightly, admonishing him. "Oh, relax. It's just a rock." Mielikki looks at it as if it's a grave threat or enemy. "So, my friend, who are you a servant to?" It says, "Sylvan Oakenleg." I see. Looking to Mielikki with a knowing glance. "And what are you doing out here?" "Well, I'm keeping an eye." "Who did you say you worship?" Mielikki suddenly pipes up. The guy blind in one eye kind of looks in her direction like, "We just went over this kind of thing." "Sylvan Oakenleg." And she, to herself, sort of mutters, "Sylvanas." The bird, the guy with the bird feathers goes, "What's that?" She says, "Nothing." She looks at the stone, who seems like he's waiting. Like, "Hey, this is your guy's thing. You just found me here." And she says, "Why are you here, Zarin?" Both of her companions look at her with slightly confused expressions. The bird feathered guy goes, "You know this thing?" And she does not give an answer. It says, "How is it that you know my name?" "You do not worship Sylvanas, Zarin." "No, as I said, I worship Sylvan Oak. It's the same person." She looks to her companions as if trying with her eyes to ask them a question that she feels they know the answer to. They seem confused as to what's going on with her. I will ask again, Zarin, why are you here? I remember you not being here. What are you talking about? Says the guy with the one blind eye. I don't know. You can't have been Sylvanas. He is my rival, and he knew it before I knew it. He would never have helped us. You are Asuas. The guy with the one blind eye looks at her, going, I think I would remember making this, Major. Says, no, Asua. Yes, you... No. The guy with the feathers behind his ears starts to move in closer to her. You don't look so well, Mija. I don't think I am. I guess I remember it both ways. But this isn't real. Does that make sense? Not particularly, Major. I guess it wouldn't. The guy with the bird behind his ear starts making grinding noises at the, clearly speaking in Primordial, at Zaram. Zaram says back, no, I have never met her before. I don't think that my master would like it if I had. The guy with the blind eye leans down, kneels down in front of her. She's kind of crouched, in a sort of as if she were going to spring into action, but she's just sort of held it there in a low stance. And he kneels down and he looks. No, Gatsu is right. He pauses, and suddenly his face seems to start to sink. And he reaches out his hand, and he opens up her eye a little bit. You have a fever, Mija. No, I didn't have the fever. Wouldn't I would remember. Gatsun, I think we should get her back. No, I did not have the fever. You do now, Mija. It has to start somewhere. No, you don't understand. I didn't catch it. I never caught it. Until you did, Major. Asua. You... But why? Why what? Do you hear that? No. I... Hear what? Gatsun, come on. Help me carry her. I don't. At this point, you can see that she's not even looking at either of them. I can hear you. Where are you? Lynn! The vision begins to start to fade. You can hear, as the voices get more distant, Gatsun, the one with the bird feathers behind his ears, saying, what are we going to do? And Asu, the guy with the one blind eye. I don't know. There has to be a cure. We just haven't found it yet. I'll do some digging. And as it gets increasingly quiet, you hear Getsun say, "Are you sure that's safe?" And Asu says, "I'm sure it isn't, but it's what I'm good at. Let's just get it back to camp for now." With that, looking back to Soren just for a moment, Lynn, you see that the veins on his head are full of some black substance and are standing on end. And his nose is faintly dripping with just a slow, steady, the kind of drip where you turn your faucet on in the wintertime, just enough to where it'll keep the water moving and not freeze the pipes. That sort of steady drip of that thick dragon blood into the center of the circle.
Dragon's blood can't let that go to waste.
And the liquid that has been in a sort of a curtain, around, floating and making, allowing vision into this stuff, sort of seems to start collecting, and it starts to rain down and into fat droplets that then fall into the circle around. And you can see that as it hits, it seems to evaporate very rapidly. Not instantly, but like at the speed of, say, isopropyl alcohol or something. You spray it, you wipe it, and it's like almost immediately gone. And the liquid just into a place that isn't here evaporates. Soren closes his eyes, and you can see that his veins are distended. And he just gently holds his eyes, like over the lid, obviously, and just wipes with his base of his palm, just wipes up across his nose some of the blood.
That doesn't bode well. Looks like our theory was right.
Now models all along.
I need a nap, I think. Oh, the visions are swimming. I hope you guys are watching carefully. It's going to take me some time to get to grips with what that just did to my brain. That was a long way to reach. Farther than I even thought.
So Sylvanus, at the time, was a rival to Mielikki. Maybe they both were trying to fight for the mantle of godhood. Have I ever heard of Sylvanus? James has, but...
Kudo very quickly remembers something vague. If you want to go ahead and make a religion check, Lynn.
Lynn?
Yeah, Lynn, because Kudo just kind of knows some things, but Lynn might have sort of different information. He might have none, but his background might allow to different information. Okay, apparently yes. So Kudo is easier. Kudo, he's another nature deity. Shedgref was never that concerned with him, primarily because, as far as Shedgref is concerned, he was kind of young. Anastasi is an incredibly old creature. Shedgref is, of course, older. But although less powerful than the gods as we know them now, technically Anastasi came first. That said, Sylvanus is just another nature deity who was either too insignificant at a time for Shedgareth to worry about, or suddenly way too powerful for Shedgareth to exert his influence over, and so again, not my concern. It's not an enemy of mine. His pantheon, or his, portfolio, is also nature, but it is more of the wild, pure kind of nature, not guided, like somewhere between Mielikki and Malar, who Malar is the side of nature that humans truly fear. Animals that hunt humans for the hatred of them, So Sylvanas is somewhere in between those two. Lynn, you know that although not bad-natured, not horrible, at least, relations between Mielikki and Sylvanas, at least as far as you weren't like privy to any conversations that they had, but their domains were always a little bit, they rubbed up against each other a lot, and it was tense. Let's see. In a technical sense, Malar would be a bigger rival of Sylvanas as far as their worshippers are concerned. But there was always some question about that. It wasn't part of any teaching or anything. It was just in the practical how it turned out. Malar servants were a little more bothersome than Sylvanas servants. You also know that Sylvanas is, reasonably speaking, pretty reserved. One might not even count him among the pantheon of nature deities, like on this continent.
Basically, yeah, takes a backseat.
Yeah, Mielikki and Malar are far more prominent. So, if there was a rivalry between Sylvanas and Mielikki, Sylvanas clearly got the worst of it, or if it was peaceable, then he maybe gave up some power. One of the two.
So, Mielikki had memories of things that happened in the future. She was talking about Zareem being made by one other person in their party.
Osu.
Yeah. They spoke of Sylvanas being her rival, but at that time, I don't feel they would have known each other. God yet would be their rivalry. Rivalry only comes from their domains of godhood. She was remembering that.
So how is this going to help us?
I mean, it's just more information. Talk about her having a fever. Like, they had known other people at that time to be getting sick like that.
Well,
obviously it was spreading at that time.
As it was made abundantly clear to us, where we are in timelines seems to be irrelevant to whatever the thing is. So whatever is happening then and now theoretically be happening at quote-unquote the same time, just at different times.
But it's strange. It's just hard to wrap your head around, because this fever, it must be the creatures that were feeding off of her. It was affecting her throughout time. Well, if that's the case, then there are more gods that this is going to happen to. Because if they had fevers in the past, then that means at some point it's going to be affecting them here in the future.
I wonder, though. Asua and Gatson are none of the Pantheon that are known. Mielikki was afflicted by this thing. Perhaps they're somehow involved in this.
She had a different name. What were they calling her?
It's either that or...
So we might. So they could be in the Pantheon, but they could be deities that we know of. We just don't know them by that name.
Trevor, would I know Ea as the prior name?
I would say yeah, with your religion check, probably.
Then I would turn to
spirit,
Lynn.
a spirit
I
that
would
came
then
to be known as
say-
Mielikki. It comes from the same word.
So I would turn to Lynn and say, given my insight into pantheons, that is probably unlikely. I believe these are actors. Malfeasant actors outside of. They seem to not belong, so to speak. We can get a beat on whatever these two things are. Perhaps we'll figure out more answers. But I turn to our leading.
Since you know some of the Pantheon, are there any gods that sound similar to these two?
No. As I said, if I knew, I would know. But this might be a stretch. I don't know if these creatures are in existence or even on a plane. You have seen them. Perhaps a scry?
No, I could attempt it.
The only harm really is static.
If it is a god, I'm definitely not.
It's not.
And I can see if they're still around.
Don't have much to
Give me
lose.
a moment.
So who are you scrying on? Sorry?
I'm going to
Asua.
try to, scry on Asua.
Okay. Gotcha.
And they would get, I think a +5. So I technically didn't meet them.
What?
So do I get nothing out of it? Do I not remember? Because I saw the notification, but...
Yeah, that felt weird. That didn't feel like a failed scry.
Lynn's been experiencing a lot of this stuff recently. Lynn will, sit there for a second and be like... I think the scry worked, but I don't remember. I think something just might have blocked me from understanding.
I have a question then for you. Whether or not you remember, if there was a tree nearby, would you be able, or in your subconscious, find that tree?
No,
Because you
because it
technically
has
did
to
see
be...
it.
I have to be able to picture it, though. And if I don't remember it, then I can't picture it.
What if Ash modifies your memory? Just think you saw a tree.
Have I ever tried to scry on someone that didn't exist? I genuinely don't know. I've
No,
scryed a
you
lot over the
definitely
years.
you've tried to scry on some. I remember you've scryed on people who couldn't scry on because they were like nothing happened. They're on opposite planes.
Pretty sure it just wouldn't go into effect at all. I mean, the way that the magic works is they have to be there. It's a very particular individual. So if they didn't exist, then it just would fail. It didn't fail.
Well,
means-
it didn't. It
I think-
wasn't resisted, should I maybe say. It was not... You did not fail to scry on someone by someone resisting your scry.
Oh, okay.
That
so,
has definitely happened before. It did not feel like that. This feels like I
Okay,
don't know
so-
what.
So perhaps they don't exist anymore. I mean, it was a long time ago. They're not gods. Possibility they don't exist. There's that, or
What
they have.
happened? Here's a
What?
good question. What happens when a god dies? Does anyone remember them? Because if they're apparently present throughout all of
Kudo.
time, if they stop existing, then they stop existing through all of time.
Not
And so
quite.
then that means no one would remember.
And Trevor, stop me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, when a god dies, or as you would call it, whatever vessel power was holding ceases to be, but the power itself remains. That's why the powers can be taken up again. I don't really believe these powers are what we would consider sentient. They require some form of sentience to bond with actually true will. So my guess is that those who take on the power of a god would essentially feel the imprint of those who held it beforehand. But truly death would not change that.
They really are just shards.
Yes, I'm essentially talking about Mistborn.
I mean, it is literally the most valid thought. Me and Trevor have actually
Anastasia has
talked about this
died,
for
but
a
I
long
definitely
time.
have her imprint. Or whatever she held.
But so the individual I scried on, they either don't exist.
Yep.
That doesn't make sense because we saw them. If they were dead, we would still know of them in some capacity.
I'm
Something's weird
thinking,
about this.
I just don't know how we can access or find these things, or whatever they were, or anything relating to them, but they seem to be not within our memory of a timeline. That's concerning.
I just wish that. I wish I could tap into that subconscious part of my brain. Because it sounds weird, but it's that whole owl thing that I was telling you guys before. How I was following an owl. It's not really a thing, but I really think it's the part of my brain that is trying to remember this stuff. It's fighting whatever is happening here.
I don't know magics that would access this stuff. I don't know if Ash has any knowledge that she could do to try to extract. But Ash, you know every spell in the world, so technically the answer would know theoretically. If there's a spell that exists.
I mean,
Ash knows. Doesn't mean I do.
I would let someone peer into my
Only-
thoughts.
The only spell that, like, detect thoughts won't help, because they won't really... It's still what you're thinking.
Yeah, but can't you, like, dig deeper with it into...
Yes, but dig deeper, like, it's still your, like, surface levels, yeah, but you're still your thoughts. I think the only thing that theoretically could work would be dream, but That's a stretch.
Torin, what are you doing? Are you trying to show us how time
String
is all messed
theory.
up again?
I'm trying to picture something. I find these kind of demonstrations useful even to myself. They're very abstract concepts that we're talking about. Out of character, I'm trying to figure out how to make this to where you guys can see it, because I'm pretty sure you can't see the little pencil markings that I've put. Oh, maybe you can right there. But
Very, very, very vaguely.
So yeah, time's looped on itself.
I
We have a Mobius strip.
The trouble I find with our situation is that we do not know how far apart on the rope that the chimes are meant to hang. How far apart were we once? Were we just the distance of my eyes? What about the distance of my ears? I have a funny feeling like in order for us to touch, the rope has to go quite some way. Now, a hopeful person might say we were very close, so the rope does not need to move very much. But if we were even that far apart, that's the beginning and the end there. What I'm trying to say is I think our little infection, not our sickness, the universe's, this time problem, it's not something that we can confirm, because we do not know from where or when we originally came. But in order to move 2 points even quite close to each other, say just the distance between my eyes there, has to go quite far, almost touching itself at the start. I wonder how far along exactly this time sickness is. Nevertheless, it's not something that we can test, so I suppose it's only a thought experiment.
The only way really to know would be to access her memories. But I know that that's not something you actually want to do. And problem is, coming here, we haven't really made much progress.
Hurt my brain.
Well, maybe we should check in to see how the rest are doing with moats, if they're close to creating something.
If they've even gotten there.
Well, we can still call. If anything, they probably did. Because remember how time works. Even though it might have taken a while there, they could still be there now. We call him, all we hear is screams on the side.
Everything went bad! Why did we split the party?
The stone giant stepped on his head to make sure he was dead.
I guess time would try to rewrite itself if something like this can't exist. Almost like an anomaly.
So try to fix itself, but then it's because that's the confusion too, though. Then would this not be worth anything? Because if I am sick with this,
We're all sick with it.
Yeah, but if I'm
difference, though-
sick with it and I end up taking the power and like 100 years pass, I mean, at one point I was suffering from this, so would I then suffer from it in the future or at any point, like
It's hard
Mielikki
to-
has?
It's hard to say, but isn't it better to try than to let this creature go into non-existence or wither away in vain?
I'd rather solve an illness than
I mean, that's what we're
take
trying
it
to
further
do.
down the road.
The difference
No,
is, Lynn, is if we take this now, regardless of what we can do down the road, is maybe we can understand the memories because she can't speak for herself.
There's no way to make Mielikki forget. None of us are strong enough for that.
What would it take? I mean, I assume you described when you cast a wish on her that when you did that, it was essentially you were borrowing power from her, almost like a water recycling thing that didn't do anything, correct?
Sure.
Or at least that's, I guess, what the description sounded like from Trevor.
Yep.
If we were to extract Mielikki into another's domain, we used power from that one to try to restore. That would be more beneficial, but then again, she is... I don't know if we could even extract her.
So, if a sick god can never exist, and it does this to them, it like basically affects them throughout time, would the individual that I tried to scry on, that could be someone who did succumb to this? As if they didn't exist and it never went through, then that could be the case. Maybe I tried to look for the god that died from this illness.
You want to look at Sylvan, or whatever his...
Well, maybe this is why, Soren, you've never heard of a god being affected by this. Because none of us can remember it, because we can't remember the god.
Soren looks like you just slapped him in the face with a wet fish, he says.
Maybe this has been happening over and over, but just none of us can remember it.
Maybe Mielikki. One day, maybe she will not have gotten sick. Maybe one day she will not have been. I guess it's time to amend my hypothesis. Of course. I thought it would happen like that. It is happening like that. But we are sick. And we remember it how it used to be. Some part of it, at least. In the resolution of all things, maybe if we were not sick, Mielikki would not be known to us.
And then we would...
So maybe... So Kudo's mind goes up. The gods that I know are only known because of the sickness. That is why I don't know the other two.
because when they succumbed, we were not yet sick ourselves. Or, I don't know, something like that. Maybe.
Well, we can test this out by just asking any individual who isn't sick, right? Or do they have to be gone?
I don't know, but... No, you're right. You're right. She isn't gone yet. But to us... Let me explain it this way. When we are on the staircase, we sleep, yes? We continue. The world does not. What if, because of our sickness, we are living in a moment, just like that? I don't know how we would leave this moment, or even if we would want to. Could we exist outside of it? A demi-plane, not of space, but of time. A world trapped in a moment. It may be a long moment. But the sand does not escape the hourglass. If the hourglass measures 1,000 years or 5 minutes, the sand is still limited. Oh no.
You've lost me.
I understand.
To put it a different way, when you guys are on the staircase, time moves on for
Yeah.
you. It's very slow for everyone outside the staircase. If you could see outside the staircase to the material world, everyone would appear to be in an agonizingly slow motion, right?
Yeah.
So, this moment in time could be the same to equivalent of what the real existence is, and we happen to be pocket outside of it.
Like we are thinking that we are at the wrong end of the microscope. Like, we as humans, we look down a microscope at these microscopic beings and we think they are the microbes. What if there's something else looking down at us? Or even that is so big that it can't even detect us because we are too small. We are smaller to it than microbes.
Well,
But
I turn to Soren and then I say,
version.
if we're stuck within this theoretical hourglass, and none of us are powerful enough to break out, then isn't that then is for naught. We are essentially stuck. And the only thing that could release us is anything outside of it, if it so chose to do so.
Well, if we're getting sick, and suddenly we can't remember when this state of sickness has progressed to a very specific point, like we can't remember who was afflicted, could that mean that if this sickness progresses enough, we actually are able to get out of this demi-plane? And that's why people in this plane can't remember those individuals anymore?
I mean, it's that or non-existence. It's like one of the two. Roll the dice.
I am inclined to agree with your friend here. It could be. Maybe all those cults of all the crazies that we've ever known. Death is the key. I always assumed it meant more going to the plane of their god, getting to the Beastlands, take a shortcut, kill yourself. A foolish way of thinking. The soul has to mature, but maybe they were more right than they knew. How would we know? We can't test that. I don't know about you, but I have not received any communications from something outside of all of this. I suppose we make a pact. One of us kills themselves and then agrees to haunt the rest. Do you see?
It wouldn't really work though.
But it wouldn't work, yeah,
Exactly.
because then we wouldn't be able to. Yeah, well, but
either we
could,
cease to exist or we're outside of it and we can't get back in.
If we are outside, there could be a way to contact us. I guess what Soren is saying.
No,
but if that's the case,
others then who have died, why haven't they tried?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it might be that it's
like
just impossible. But there's no way of knowing, is my point. And I have to say I'm a little worried about trying it. There's not so many of us willing, much less able, to try to sort this all out. I have lost friends because they chose a different way. They chose to live the rest of their lives. And try to forget. But if those few of us who can do something go around killing ourselves, we had better be right. I don't think I'm willing to take the chance. Maybe this is a development, a real development, not the drudgery we have been dealing with. I wonder if Hex Animus will speak to us.
So, the idea is that when the convergence happened, instead of accidentally mixing up time, it instead created parallel, almost demi-plane of time, in which we all exist.
It could be. Take a little sand from the hourglass, fill your own, call it fixed. But there would be no way of knowing. Boggles the mind.
Very heady for me. I am a wise man, but not a smart man.
I have been alive a long time, my friend. This is no easier for me. I thought I understood that before this escapes me, I am going to make a decision. There would be no way of knowing what lies on the other side. But we do know that in our little bubble, if that is where we are, we can maybe fix things. We can. If time can curl on itself, it can be uncurled. We just don't know how. Right?
Yeah. And I guess it would get all of us out of this demi-plane and back into what would be where we're supposed to be. I guess maybe that's what Hex Animus has been working toward.
Maybe. I can see now why he says so little to us. Would you share this news?
No. No, before I thought I was powerless. Now I feel small.
The ants don't go around wondering if it's worth building their anthill. Maybe it's not such a bad thing to be small. Small is not powerless. If the problem is small, then you're just the right size to correct it. What I mean to say is I wish to focus on fixing what can be fixed. I will not succumb to what all of my friends did. Deciding to live their life with their eyes shut. If I am an ant, so be it. I have an anthill to build. And I will not balk at this responsibility. If nothing we do matters, then all that matters is what we do.
I still feel like we're no closer towards any type of solution, just now that we can see the bigger problem.
Think of those who are not sick. Those who could not see the problem at all. They don't even know there is one to be solved. Knowledge is power. We must be getting closer. We just... Or maybe I'm just being hopeful. Like I said, I have an anthill to build. I will beg an audience with Hexanimus. If possible, if he will agree, I will summon for all of you. You saw all of these things. Sorry. Firsthand. Or as much as I did. You should collect your friends. Perhaps you can see what they've learned. We are privileged in a way. I'm sure it doesn't feel like it. But the Hexanimus does not share this. We learned it on our own. But if this is the truth, then we may now be his peers. Small victory, if he can't figure out the solution, but I will hold on to that victory anyway. This heat can drive men mad, I suppose. But I feel a certain clarity. Just to remind you guys, you're in a fucking volcano. I know I never pulled you off the map, probably, but, you know, you're in the middle of a volcano. I must go.
And Lynn just, like, still looks mournful and confused.
Let's see if our friends are ready. Yes.
I will see you
Call
all
them up.
soon. Lynn. My friends died for nothing. He looks to Zarim's body, the pieces that made up the circle. Take comfort in knowing that yours are not.
Yeah.
Until we see each other again. Goodbye. He walks toward the portal that will lead him out. So, trying to get a hold of the gang.
Mm.
Yep.
Alright, sending spell, I assume.
Yep.
You would probably get back a response of, tell Kudo sorry about the potions. But we've learned a few things. Maybe you should come to us instead.
I mean, they were given, so they needed them. There's no need to
Yeah.
apologize.
Yeah, but maybe Kudo thought of a grander design for them in the meantime. In any case.
Well, I guess we can scry on them now. Let's go to
Yeah.
them.
I'll scry on Spitt.
And you see that Spitt is... the light that is cast on Spitt is very, very familiar. It is very... feels like where you are now. A forge at rest, and yet burning unbelievably hot. Over the anvil, there is a burial shroud, and underneath the burial shroud is, a shape of a large humanoid figure, still, obviously, unmoving. And standing over it is this massive human, like giant-sized human. It looks almost at first as if he's wearing a sort of a cloak of fur, but it's more like he looks like a half a werewolf. He's a very distinct facial features from anything that you've seen, and a sort of a natural tattoo that kind of seems to be growing on him. He's got two horns that upsweep to almost touch each other. And, is sallow the right word? Sallow skin? Sallow. No, not sallow. Swarthy, maybe.
Fallow.
Swarthy. He's a kind of a swarthy skinned person. And around him stands Spitt, Dalen, and Drognan. They're being relatively quiet and respectful. But they just say there's no trees seeming to be around. You're on an interior of something. Spitt excuses himself for a moment. Says, I need to step outside to get some air. Without making any kind of response, the giant just sort of nods, and Spitt heads outside. It's a barren place, but at the entrance, among the debris of some golems that look to have recently been dismantled in a not-so-professional way, there is, in this barren canyon, clinging to life, there is a tree which, despite the presence of a torch on either side of the tree, that seemed to be like a burning brazier bowl on each side, that the flames lick against the tree, it seems unaffected. The whole of the canyon that leads up to the entrance of this place is covered in these symbols. It's miles into the distance. The distance looks all fuzzy and grainy, almost like TV grain, where the symbols become so small that there's sort of inconsistencies in the rock that just begin to hurt your eyes if you look at them. Those that are close, you recognize some of the languages here, although many, many, many languages are written. All of them are warnings to keep out. They're written in the many tongues of men, some of which you speak, in the primordial languages, some of which you speak, and in the very, very old languages, which I don't think Lynn speaks any of. Covering every square inch, it would seem, of the canyon and the entrance to this place. Over the door to this place, it reads, again in many of these languages, but as opposed to being like a scrawling, endless kind of string of the same warning, it's a phrase. It says, "Turn back. Nothing of value lies inside." Spitt says, "Hope you can see me, Lynn," and gestures to the tree that is untouched by the licking flames of the two braziers. And we'll probably leave it there till next time. A lot to think about, I'm sure. As you guys can see,
What thickens, my brain hurts more.
You kind of... I'm sure you guys would have been happier sending Spitt, Dalen, and Drognan with Soren to do the whole Mielikki and Zarim thing. And you guys go on the easy path where you just have to fight a bunch of clay golems and stone golems and stuff. And
Yeah.
the nice and easy of, hey, Mr. Enkiducer, how do we fix a god? Seems a much simpler task now, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, Dalen did have foresight. I'm curious to know how that worked for him.
Well, judging by the amount of dead golems that Lynn saw, I'm sure he would be pretty sure that it was absolutely necessary to their survival. Very large golems of ancient make, like stone golems that are like the Argonath in Lord of the Rings. Those two giant statues that, like, you know, there's a waterfall, turn back. The guys with their hands extended, like, huge fucking stone golems. But anyhow, that's where we're going to leave it for this time. I blame you guys for not picking the combat route unknowingly.